I read this bizarre statistic the other day. We have more detailed maps of the surface of Mars than we do of the bottom of our own oceans. We're all obsessed with SpaceX going public and looking at the stars, but we know almost nothing about what's right underneath us.
Right. And the common explanation is that space is the final frontier, this grand human quest for knowledge. But that's a bit of a romantic illusion. If you really want to understand why all the smart money is blasting off into the vacuum, you have to stop thinking about exploration and start thinking about incentives. The billionaires aren't building ships for humanity, they're building lifeboats for themselves.
Lifeboats, that's a strong way to put it. Okay, so let's start with the ocean then. Why the blind spot? Why are we ignoring this massive part of our own planet?
It comes down to a simple, brutal calculation of leverage. Think of the Earth as a building. The deep sea is the basement. Space, specifically low Earth orbit, is the penthouse. Now, if your goal is to control what happens in the building, do you invest in the basement or the penthouse?
The penthouse, obviously, you can see everything from there.
Exactly. The physics and economics of ocean exploration are punishing. The deeper you go, say to the Mariana Trench, the pressure is over 1,000 times what it is at sea level. The engineering challenge is immense. And for what strategic advantage do you gain by controlling the seabed? You can't see anything. You can't influence global events. It's a tactical dead end.
But isn't it full of resources? I imagine there's untold mineral wealth down there. Surely someone like a Jeff Bezos or an Elon Musk would see the potential in that.
They do, but they also see a much bigger price. Controlling low Earth orbit gives you absolute dominance over the entire global grid. We're talking about more than 7,500 active satellites managing everything from the GPS in your car to nuclear missile early warning systems. The entire modern world runs through that orbital layer. Think about this. Over $5 trillion in foreign exchange transactions happen every single day, and the timing of those trades depends on the atomic clocks in GPS satellites.
I see. So if you control the orbit, you can essentially turn off the global economy.
You could turn off a continent. You could blind armies, shut down financial centers, cripple communications. In a geopolitical conflict, the entity that owns the orbital penthouse wins. It's the ultimate high ground. So, yes, there might be some valuable minerals in the basement, but the keys to the entire building are in the penthouse. We're seeing a shift where national borders on a map matter less than the orbital altitude a corporation can achieve and hold.
So it's not about looking up at the stars and wonder, it's about looking down on the rest of us with control. That's a chilling thought. It reframes the whole thing.
And that control is just the first part of the story. The next reason is even more fundamental. It's about survival.
Okay, so if the Earth is this building we're all in, and the elite are buying the penthouse, what's this other reason?
It's a concept straight out of IT and data security. It's called an off-site backup. If a company has mission critical data, they don't just make a copy and store it on a server in the next room. That's foolish. If the building burns down, you lose everything. You store a copy in a completely different physical location.
Right, that makes sense. A disaster recovery plan.
Well, the absolute elite, the people running the mega funds and the giant tech companies have run the numbers on planet Earth. They see the data on climate collapse, the risk of runaway AI, the potential for nuclear conflict. Their macro models are telling them that Earth is becoming a highly volatile failing asset.
A failing asset. Wow.
So, what do you do when your primary server is at risk of catastrophic failure? You create an off-site backup. Mars and the Moon. They aren't science projects. They're a hard drive in a different building. They are an off-site backup for the DNA, consciousness, and legacy of a tiny fraction of humanity. It's a planetary risk hedging strategy.
Okay, let's step back for a second. As an everyday person, I see a rocket launch and it feels inspiring. It feels like a moment for all of humanity. But are you saying we're actually just cheering for our own abandonment?
In a way, yes. We're cheering for the construction of a lifeboat that we are not invited on. The public relations narrative is always about making humanity a multi-planetary species. It sounds noble, but the private logic is about preserving a specific lineage and asset class. When that backup is eventually restored, the people left behind in the original building are the ones who couldn't afford a ticket. It raises a fascinating question. Why is it easier for the smartest money in the world to imagine colonizing a frozen dead planet than it is to imagine fixing the one we're on?
Because a backup is a simpler, more contained solution than trying to fix a complex burning building. That's a cold mathematical calculation, which I guess brings us to the money itself. If survival is one part of it, what's the other?
The other is pure, uncut capitalism. Earth is a fully mapped, fully regulated system. If you want to build a mine here, you have to deal with governments, borders, environmental impact studies, labor unions, and taxes. It's messy and expensive.
Right, there are rules. Friction.
Space is the ultimate anarcho-capitalist dream. It's a gold rush in a vacuum. There are no ESG constraints on an asteroid. There are no labor unions on the moon. There are no pesky indigenous populations or sovereign nations to negotiate with. It is the final unregulated frontier.
It sounds like the Gilded Age on steroids. Can you give me an analogy for the kind of wealth we're talking about? It's hard to even conceptualize.
Let's try. NASA estimates that the mineral wealth just in the asteroid belt could be worth something like $700 quintillion. That's a 7 with 20 zeros after it.
I don't even know what that number means.
It means that if you divide it up, every single person on Earth would get about $100 billion. But of course, it won't be divided up. This is the key. Whoever builds the first scalable automated mining infrastructure in space won't just get rich. They will trigger a wealth transfer so massive it will make the entire current global economy look like a rounding error. It's like discovering the Americas, but without the inconvenience of anyone already living there. The first entity to successfully mine an asteroid effectively becomes its own sovereign state, with more wealth than all of Earth's nations combined.
And that's what you mean by orbital secession. They're not just leaving physically, they're leaving the entire economic and legal system behind. They're checking out.
Precisely. They are moving the most profitable and often most destructive parts of the capitalist engine into a zone where no government, no law, no collective human will can ever reach it. They are creating a legal vacuum in the physical vacuum of space.
So let's try to pull these threads together. This is a lot to process. What we're seeing isn't just a simple space race. First, it's a strategic move. The obsession with space over our own oceans shows that global power isn't about land anymore. It's about controlling the orbital grid that runs our entire digital world.
That's right. It's the ultimate high ground. Then it's a survival hedge. The elite see Earth as an increasingly risky asset, and they're building an offsite backup to preserve their own legacy, not to save humanity as a whole.
And finally, it's the ultimate regulatory escape. Space is an anarcho-capitalist haven, a place to pursue infinite extraction and profit without any of the rules, taxes, or morals that constrain them here on Earth.
It's the perfect storm of strategy, survival, and profit.
We've been taught to look at rocket launches as a symbol of human unity and curiosity. But if you look at the incentives, you see something much more chilling: the orbital secession. We aren't watching the expansion of humanity. We are watching the world's smartest money decide that the best way to save the future of Earth is to leave it behind. The real question isn't whether we can reach the stars, but what happens to the billions of us left on a dying, monitored grid when the people with the offsite backup finally decide to hit save and walk away.